What's up, Internet? Welcome back to the Crypto Junkie channel, where we talk about all things crypto. Today, we're going to talk about energy, and I want to wrap up a couple core points that I found going back through all the live streams that George Wentz has been on recently. So if you know, we had him on the channel recently, and then after that, he went on like 3 or 4 other shows. And I actually liked all the other shows better than the one we did, coincidentally. And so he just got, maybe they're better at interviewing. I don't know. That's completely okay with me, by the way. But there was just kind of questions asked a different way, and I feel like what was talked about was really, really good. So considering the geothermal tech is so big and such a big piece of what they're talking about, I wanted to talk about that today. And really, I wanted to give some insight into why I'm so crazy about this topic, right? Is because it's like, been in crypto since 2017, gotten to see a lot of false promises, a lot of like really smart people get wrapped up and taken down, smart people who were frauds, and everything in between, right? Like, you guys don't know about some of the stuff that I went on and did through 2018, 2019, but I got to see the issue with a lot of the hierarchy structure that could occur within a coin project, and just get to see how a lot of stuff that is now everywhere, wokeness, all this bullshit that doesn't matter, it can really take something down really quick, and people with malicious intent can rot a company, an idea, the smartest of person, the greatest of people with the greatest of intent. And all of that, leads to a pretty jaded viewpoint on the world, right? And right now we're seeing how, man, a lot of these conversations and these issues, there's nothing that's going to come out of them, right? And I'm starting to myself take a different stance on this, because the minute that I go and validate in any sort of way, just by me talking about these people or these things, these topics, these political people, all of these disconnects and hypocrisy, like the minute I do that, I am going and throwing myself into the mud pit with them. And I'm validating them in a lot of ways. So by me even trying to like prove at every turn with data points and proof that this person's an idiot, it's like, no, we need to find a new hill to stand on. We need to find a new vantage point to stand on. And there's very rarely do you see something come along that can really shake this stuff up from the outside in, because it doesn't really require any of these stupid people, like genuinely stupid, ignorant, as an observation, not an insult, that are playing this game, and they get on TV and they got, the outfits, and they're playing this whole song and dance to get you wrapped up into playing this game and focusing over here, when there's this whole plethora of issues that affect every single one of us that will actually positively move the needle forward. About income inequality, equal rights, all this shit that does matter is being muddied up with by a bunch of people, politicians, by the way, which are the last people that should be talking about this, and in a bunch of ways that just move us further away from the solution, you see? Because the goal clearly isn't to fix the problems. The goal is to keep us distracted and divided. So anyways, that's my rant before we actually get started into this. That's why as soon as I started hearing about this, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. This is good. We got to dive into this, right? So today, we're gonna talk. We're gonna play through this and do a reaction. And I just want to state that I'm using this under fair use. Hopefully, everyone is okay. I will put links to these underneath in the description. Don't do a copyright takedown, please. Just reach out to me first with any stuff that I'm using. Yeah, I assume that it'll be okay, but I just want to put that out there. All right, let's dive in.
Overview. Let's drill down on some things, because this is really exciting. There's obviously a number of components of energy, right? Distribution is a game changer, as well as the types of energy that you're utilizing as your generation, right? And my understanding is that these are renewable energy sources that you're talking.
Quick life hack: 1.5 minimum, 2x usually, but I don't want to do that, because maybe in a replay you guys will be like, oh my gosh, what am I listening to? But yeah, and if English isn't your native language, you're gonna have to slow this way down.
About essentially broadcasting across the world. Can you talk about those renewable sources? I know geothermal is a big part of that.
Yeah, geothermal is a big part for us, because being of the industry, in the industry, we understand the delivery systems that are available. Currently, all of those are mechanical wired delivery systems. They must be balanced. People don't really understand that within the grid that runs our energy system, there is no storage, right? So you're constantly having to balance the output with the input. And that balancing of energy is best done through using generation sources that produce what we in the industry call base power. And base power is consistent 24/7, 365, dispatchable power that supports every single demand, right? Now we know at 4 a.m. when people are starting to get up and coffee pots are going off and things of this nature, that there's a spike. Hot water heaters go on because people want to take a shower. So we know those, and we know all of those patterns of use, right? That's the way that the power grid has worked for many, many decades. But because of the introduction of what we call variable source power, which is wind and solar, when the wind blows, you get more power. You can't do anything about that. You got a generator right in the middle of that big, huge windmill, right? When the wind doesn't blow, you get no power. Well, we don't know exactly when the wind is going to blow and when it's not, and then we have to compensate for all that to bring it in. Now, are those types of renewables, are they part of the puzzle? They may be part of the puzzle, but they're probably not as good as having something that is a non-carbon-based base power that then creates a constant supply of electricity going out into the grid, right? So when we look at renewables like solar and we look at renewables like wind, is that a good starting point? I mean, was that a good place? I understand why we've done it. I'm not a huge fan because oftentimes it's been, I think resources have been malappropriated due to subsidies and government intervention and things of that nature. So I think that we have trouble with rare earth metal mining. I don't think we're taking into account the entire value chain there and everything that goes into it. People are feeling very, very good about their lithium batteries and their Tesla, but they're not taking into account the diesel mining trucks that were putting out particulates into the air and creating all kinds of pollution when they were mining that. They're not taking into account the Chinese control of all of that. They're not taking into account the cobalt that is being mined in the Democratic Republic of the Congo by poor young children with no shoes on with pickaxes, right? These are the types of things that people, this is the equivalent of my grandchildren thinking that the electricity comes from the plug in the wall, right?
And this is a big point that I brought up on my show is that, again, we're focusing on, I feel like we're focusing on the wrong stuff all over again, is that doesn't get us there. So a model that I often use that I want to give you is, think of it like this. If everyone on the planet, every driver on the planet had a Tesla, or an electric vehicle that required the same amount of batteries that the Tesla requires, does that make the planet better or worse? And like really compare that out. Like if you need to literally draw a T, pros, cons, list them out. Lithium batteries cannot be exhausted. They burn until they're completely done, right? So the pollution that creates, gathering the materials, that all of these things on the con list, on the pros, self-driving cars, I don't know what else would be benefits, maybe cost, electric, those sorts of things, even though you're not really taking into consideration like the dirty aspects and how that energy is gathered, right? How that power is gathered, how those batteries are created. We got the disposable aspect of the batteries, all of this stuff, right? When a lithium battery loses its charge, you can't bring it back. You can't revamp it. It's just dead. And then it's just this huge, paperweight essentially. So, list that out if you ever get to that point where you're trying to figure out pros and cons, and just fast forward to a version of reality when the entire planet's got those. Does it make it better or worse? Or can you not tell, right? Anyway, let's continue.
We're not looking at the entire value chain. There's a better way to do all of this. And that's where we're after. That's what we're after. That's what our team is focused on. We have some R&D that is pretty incredible that we're doing that we will do an unveiling of here in the near future. I'm hopeful that is a wonderful carbon-free way to generate electricity, base power, constant supply of electricity. Another way to do it is geothermal, as you mentioned. And if you want to get really geeky on geothermal, I'm ready, man. Okay. I'm a bit, the Earth has an unlimited supply, really, of heat at its core. And if we can go deep enough down, we can always get heat. And I'll tell you something about power generation that most people don't understand. What we're doing is we're recreating a teapot. The essential fundamental way that we create power is we boil water. What does a nuclear plant do? What's the whole purpose of a nuclear plant?
Heat up water.
At the end of the day, it's going to boil water to create steam, and the steam powers a steam turbine, and the steam turbine goes around in circles, and it turns a generator, which breaks electromagnetic fields and creates electricity. Yep. We're boiling water, guys. There's got to be a better way to boil water, right?
Yeah, that's
what,
right.
at the core, that's it. How do you most effectively and efficiently make water boil? And we have that answer.
Well, we know the efficiencies of expanding water. Boy, it is definitely a very efficient use of.
Yes.
I want to talk about this core. So I'm a fan of Tesla technology, and of course, back in the early 1900s with Wardenclyffe Tower and J.P. Morgan, we had ourselves an opportunity in those early days of Tesla technology to actually do this tech. So this isn't in the sense of conceptually new, but I know that your folks and the folks that you're in relationship with have actually improved upon those original designs of Tesla to be able to distribute wireless technology. And I think that one of the big misconceptions people have is they don't realize the power of the electromagnetic wave. And they think that we're shooting electrons at people, and they don't actually know the science of how this potentially works. So can you explain to us, when it comes to wireless distribution of energy, how that actually...
Yeah, you froze up for just a second there, but I think the question is how does the wireless tech actually work with the wave and the use of what we call the Zenith wave? The thing that's cool is the way that this wireless delivery of electricity marries perfectly with geothermal production of electricity. So people need to understand that when you're using the wireless tech, Tesla's the realization of Tesla's dream of wireless tech. That's what we're doing here. That is only a distribution. You still have to create the electrons. You still have to create the electricity initially. And that's why this is so cool pairing. It's a wonderful pairing. Sounds like a dessert wine, doesn't it? It's a wonderful pairing with geothermal, because geothermal is usually out in the middle of nowhere, right? God did not put the hot rocks in the same spot that he put all the people and all the transmission lines.
Right.
And so the question with geothermal it hasn't been can we do it, although I'd love to get back to how we do it because it is really cool and it's a huge step forward. But pairing it with the wireless gets it globally distributed. And the distribution of the geothermally produced electricity is what has always been the stumbling block for geothermal, because the hot rocks ain't where people are.
That's right.
You know? Yeah.
Can you hear me now, George?
I do. I hear you now.
So let me ask you. So I'm in Central Texas, and I drive up I-35 all the time, and I go through Waxahachie, and I see a
you've
Tesla
seen it
tower,
then.
and then I drive out to Italy, and I see another
Yeah.
one. And so when I think about this future, you mentioned in your last stream with Wales that, let's say in southern Idaho where there's good geothermal, that there's one of these towers, and you said one tower actually sends and sets up this wave. I'm assuming some sort of standing wave that literally can be engaged with if you have the antenna on the other side, which is really, I guess inducing this the actual power. How many of these towers need to be set up to actually provide, commercial grade electricity to the world? Like, what does it take infrastructure wise?
Well, it's going to take, number one, proper generation, right, of the power. But the tower design that you've driven by in Italy, Texas, not Italy,
Yeah.
that was the design capacity of that tower. And I was there when it was being built. I've crawled all over that thing. It is really cool. It's amazing tech that the Coram brothers there have come up with. And I so admire them. And we are just about to enter into our partnership with them. We've been working with them for some time. And I've actually been involved with that group for about 5 years as a friend and not an investor. Now we are ready to get behind them and actually unleash that. They've overcome some issues that they had to overcome, and I think we're just about to come out of that, and now we will see this deployed. But that tower, to answer your question, can produce a wave that can be all around the entire surface of the Earth. And that tower is designed to have the capacity to deliver up to 150 megawatts of power, commercial grade electricity. Now that's a lot. When you think about a megawatt, like if you're a fellow who's worried about being caught from a hurricane or something, and you want to have backup generation for your house, you're probably looking at 15 to 25 kilowatts, right?
Right.
We're talking about a megawatt. Now, a megawatt can run several hundred homes. In a temperate climate, it could run 1,000 homes, maybe more. In a cold climate, if you're heating with electricity, it could still run 200 homes or so. So,
Quick point of interjection is this is what I brought up on the live stream as well, is that typical Tesla home pack, the coil pack that they come and put in your garage, which takes forever for them to set up and get approved by the city and then get your power company to sign off on, and you actually start to save money on your electricity bill right now. After you've already have to be pre-approved to get it, that only provides, I think, 10 kilowatt hours. So to give you a comparison, it's very small, the amount, and it works as a subsidy. So it does not work as a complete takeover of the system. It works as just a subsidy. It's meant to subsidize power in times when it can. That's it, right? And in other times, it takes the electricity and sells it back to the power company, and you save some money on your power bill, right? So that's how the system is working again. So again, to think forward, fast forward, everyone on the planet has this Tesla power pack on their homes. The favelas in South America have it. The slums throughout Africa have it. Is this a good thing? Throughout Asia, we have it. Is this a good thing with the heat, with all of the temperature and climate issues? Again, I don't even think they'd be able to service the entire planet, but let's say they could, and everyone got one. Would that be the best way for us to move forward? Is to just take this existing power grid that we've got and just box up a new battery solution on top of it? Again, I argue no. I argue this slow progression of different models of refrigerators coming out, different iPhones coming out every single year. All they're doing is trapping you into buying a new $1,000 TV every single year. I remember when TVs were like $200, $300. Well, now with all the OLED tech, you know what I'm saying? And it's just like, if it was up to them, they would just slow roll this stuff out. And over the next 20 years, we would all spend, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on this slow needle moving forward tech crap. And we don't need that. We could just go all the way to the finish line. So as a big consolidator of data and information, you already know that I'm naturally going to be attracted to something like this versus, oh yeah, now there's 3 cameras. Oh, what's next year? 4 cameras. Oh, yay, now it folds. It's like, you know what I mean?
A lot of power is a lot of power. We were involved in a 450 megawatt gas-fired power plant built, standing up that infrastructure, and that revolutionized the power supply for 3 developing nations. So there's a lot. 150 megawatts is a lot. It would revolutionize an African nation if we were able to deliver that there wirelessly, and underdeveloped, underserved. There's still 1.4 billion people that don't have electricity or are underserved by electricity. So there's a massive good that we can do by allowing this to be delivered there safely.
By the way, there's billions who don't have internet either. So there's 1.4 billion who don't have electricity, yeah? But there are also, I think, double or triple that don't have internet, if not more.
So that's what that does. To get into the meat and potatoes of it, Jonathan Zinnik was a mathematician in Germany, and back at the same time that Marconi was looking at exploring radio waves, there were 2 competing theories going on. One was Hertzian, and Hertzian is what was adopted. It was actually easier to make happen, less expensive to make happen than Jonathan Zinnik's work. And so Hertzian goes in all directions, 360 degrees, all directions, goes straight up to the universe, goes out.
2.9 billion people do not have internet. I just wanted to get that data for you right there. I literally just searched that out. 1 in 3 people around the world have never used the internet. Holy shit. 1 in 3 people around the world have never actually used the internet. And this is according to Washington Post. Wow. Wow. Around 37% of the world's population, or 2.9 billion people, have still never used the internet. Okay. So I still don't have an answer on how many people don't have wireless access. Okay, the global internet percentage rate is 59%. Wow. So worse, right? Almost. So about 3 billion. Well, it's the same amount. So it's the same amount. Have never used it. Don't have it. Okay. All right. Yeah. Because 59%. There's just over 8 billion people. So yeah, same number. Wow. Okay. Back to it.
Out, goes down, goes everywhere. What it won't do is it won't curve the surface of the Earth. So Zinc, and it also is not focused, so it's not efficient. You can imagine the little antenna on the hood of your car, right? Slicing through the AM bands as you're running down the highway. You're just getting such a little piece of those radio waves through there that there has to be a massive amount of power put out to produce those waves. Zinnic's approach was he determined that there was an electromagnetic field that encompassed the surface of the Earth. So if you imagine that the Earth was here and you could pop a balloon up around the Earth, that would be the electromagnetic field. And then Zinnick postulated mathematically that if you built a tower of the right height, you could launch a wave that was trapped within that electromagnetic field and therefore would be directed, as opposed to being like Hertz going everywhere, right? Yeah, and so this is much more efficient, much more effective. It takes less power to launch it, and you can use it more effectively because it doesn't lose its power as it goes, right? So it can go farther. So the question was, could we actually do that and bend the surface of the Earth? And that tower was built to demonstrate that it could be done. And the testing that the folks that are behind the building of that tower have done to date have proven that indeed Zinnick was right, and that we can bend the surface of the Earth, we can follow the surface of the Earth, and that we can create a wave that can deliver electricity safely globally. And that changes absolutely everything when you think about it. You know, that's how that works. Now, how the actual I would have to, pass on telling you that I understand every single aspect of this because I'm not one of the inventors. I have dealt with them. They talk in, I am an attorney and a business guy,
right,
and a constitutional scholar. I'm like, I listen to them, but what I have done is I've seen it with my own eyes, and I've seen it happen. I've seen, a long distance from where the wave is launched. I've seen electrical devices moving and accepting and receiving energy wirelessly, and I've stood in the path of it, and I've been all around it, and not only does it work, but it does work safely.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna ask maybe.
Okay, so what they get into next, and I strongly suggest you go watch this, is how do you lock that down? How do you make that your IP? And this is where they get into talking about how, hey, actually on these same waves we can send data, and that is really like the right? Insert the Steve Jobs meme, right? That is the true, like, one of the bigger epiphanies with this. It's like the geothermal stuff sounds great. And if you listen in this interview, they get into the water usage problem and how they've kind of solved that. But I think that the real banger here, because I don't know if you're like me, but I'm a huge Nikola Tesla nerd. And I just remember researching him at many different points in my life, getting reinvigorated all over again with his story, or something will kind of trigger it in my brain again, and I'll go back to the mounds of data that I've got. And it was a truly special person or thing, whatever he was. If he was or wasn't from our planet or reality or whatever, I'll just say that a lot of what he was working on, it got mothballed. It got taken away from us, and I think there's like this huge divergence that occurred in our timeline to where all those videos, those movies that we used to see in the 80s and early 90s that were talking about this like crazy future where by 2020 we're like living on Mars and we're inhabiting all these other planets. Like, what the fuck happened, dude? Like, here we are, 2022, and we're arguing over pronouns. Like, no one saw this coming. No one saw this coming. This was not put in outside of Orwell's 1984. Outside of that, like, you did not see this in movies. You did not see the current reality that we're living in movies. So what happened, right? And so, I don't know, it's just a big tragedy to me, and that's why I think that we have the power to help this go viral. And so I'm going to keep talking about this until everyone either unsubscribes or we help them push over these mile markers and these milestones that they've got, because this is that big idea, right? That when you're at the front of this, not only are you able to profit and make money, because this is like the ushering in of like a new era kind of move, but also too, it's something you can feel good about, and it's something that I think a lot of people get excited about. So let me now jump into the second video that I've got here. Let's pull this up. I got my timestamps.
That is miniaturized.
Yeah, we're gonna go back to 17. Let's go back to 17. And here he is on Discord Syndicate Show.
Better, healthier energy. And that's if the people that own that effort are decentralized throughout the world through crypto, then it can't be taken away.
No, 100% agree with that. And I know there's a lot of like-minded people that feel the same way that you do. Hey, Fawn, I'm going to make you a moderator on my channel here. Fawn, if you can provide the link on the website for the green paper, that would be wonderful. I would appreciate that. So you are officially a mod. With great power comes great responsibility, young lady. So make sure you use it wisely. But what I really like about this community is it's not just hey, look, we can revolutionize the way that energy is generated and the way that it's distributed straight to the people. But also it's hey, we can decentralize it in a way that there's no central power authority that can stop this transmission from happening and stop people from being able to utilize and access the grid. So with that, I sent you guys over a paper from a close friend of mine who said, yes, this information needs to be out there. About 10 years ago, they did a geological survey of Colorado, and they found that there is one of the hottest spots in the world. It's just not far under the surface, and it's acres upon hundreds of acres of geothermal energy. They went through the licensing process. They were the first geothermal licensed and approved project, because it never came to fruition, through the state of Colorado. And they were talking, he's brilliant. He's an astrophysicist, and he was a project manager on the Orion project with Lockheed Martin. And he worked with some geologist friends of his through some of the academic connections that he had. And they found that, and if there's only one other plant that he said is really doing this well that he knows of in Italy, it's been running for over 100 years. All these other geothermal plants have done this wrong in the past for energy transmission. They're dumping it out on the ground once they bring it out. And I heard you bring up on Crypto Heartbeat show, it needs to be this closed loop system. And that echoed exactly what he was saying, is we need to pump that cold water back into the ground to be reheated and come back up and do it all over again. And he's pretty much figured that out. And he was very, very happy for absolutely no money whatsoever. Said, if these guys can make this project happen, here's all of our documentation, our research, and our paperwork that we've got filed on this, because this needs to happen for humanity.
And that's a key point here. Is like, you notice how around topics like this, around subjects like this, you tend to get a lot of people who are just like, hey, you know what? I don't care what you want to just take it. I just want to be involved in this. And that's the feeling. I don't know if you get this feeling, like, listening to this guy, starting to understand more and more like what they're trying to do. But that's the same feeling I get, is I'm just like, you know what? Even if I don't even know what I'm going to get out of this, I don't care. I just want to be involved in some sort of way. I just want to keep talking about this guy. I want to keep talking about this project, because I know that like there's a net positive to us, to quality of life down the road, And so again, man, it's like there's two ways to react to the mound of things that is in front of us, right? Is we can argue on social media about it all day long, and that's proven to be fruitless over the last 4 years, right? That's done nothing, right? It's actually just validated them more and increased their followers, and more people have fallen into the delusions of the dumb shit that's coming out of their mouths, right? And then we can do something else, which is like just go and create the system you want to live in, and then just live in that reality. And this is the closest thing. I don't know about you and where you've been researching, but with everything I've come across, this is one of the closest things we've got, right?
So yes,
and that's exactly right. I mean, it really does need to happen for humanity. The difference between the old-fashioned way, like there's been geothermal. There's a couple of problems with geothermal as it exists. One is that in generally speaking, there's no transmission structure where the hot rocks are. Okay, so once you create this geothermal source of heat and you access it by drilling down, so people that don't know, the further you go down into the center of the earth, it just naturally is hotter and hotter and hotter. If you can drill deep enough, you can get to the ability to produce geothermal heat, geothermal energy almost anywhere. Geothermal energy is simply taking advantage of that natural heat that is beneath the surface of the earth to heat water and then make that water turn into steam, and then through that steam you shoot it through a turbine, which spins around in circles and then drives a generator. So it's just like an operator under the hood of a car, right?
Yep.
So, I'm sorry?
Boiling hot water is power generating energy, as you said in other terms.
Yeah, I mean, all we're doing is boiling water. We need to think of the best possible, cleanest possible way to boil that water. Do we really have to split atoms and create the potential for a meltdown like a Fukushima thing, or is there a better way to do it? We don't criticize other forms of energy. We just do what we do, and what we're focused on is providing the cleanest base power, dispatchable 24/7 energy, 365 days a year, that is clean and that we can then transmit to the world. That's what we're about here. And we feel that there are several ways to generate energy, which are fine. And sometimes we have to combine bits and pieces of those to get where we want to go. But in the long run, I've always felt, and I believe in my heart, that the natural heat of the earth and taking advantage of it is the best way to do it. There's no pollution. There's no carbon put into the atmosphere. There's no greenhouse gas issues. The EPA can't come in and say that you're doing something wrong because there's no emission associated with it.
And I'd like to touch base on that real quick, because that has become this is not a scientific debate any longer. That is a political debate that is going on right now. And I don't know why we're listening to politicians about science, because science is ever evolving and ever open to being proven wrong. So it's
embarrassing.
My astrophysicist helped the HARP community, or the HARP facility, start mapping. He had an idea. He presented it academically. It was accepted. HARP is now mapping the ultraviolet spectrum of the wavelength of light that nobody has ever mapped before. And in their findings, they're going to release something very soon. It's been a little over 3 years since they started mapping this, and they're finding that we're actually bleeding these carbon emissions into space faster than we're actually producing them. There is, in the last 20 years, the amount of carbon in the air is so minute versus what it was 20 years before that it's a non-issue, but it's the political issue that they're using to say that that's what's causing global climate change. And so if we can just get away from
correct, and to just take that a step further, you've all seen this, right? I don't have to really harp on this for too long, but it's like, imagine that, like, if nobody steps in, into the breach and calls them on their bullshit right now, where are they going to be with power and locking you down and getting you to eat bugs and getting you like carbon footprint, social credit system, like all of those are like the new conspiracy theories, by the way, which just like the old ones that are now truths, who knows how true those will become. But it's like, do we really want to give these people this sort of power? Why? And clearly, as they've proven, they're not living and operating off the same system and mandates that they put out for you. So it's rules for you, but not for them. I don't know about you, but I'm just I've had enough of this shit, right? And so again, it goes back to that. Like, what would I rather do with my time? Like, try and strive towards some sort of solution and some sort of answer to this that, coincidentally will help raise all the ships? Or do I want to go into the trenches, into the pig pen, and roll around in the mud with them and try and like argue with, in an arena where you're already at a disadvantage, right? You can just get banned off the platform. They'll slap you with misinformation labels. They'll, kick you out, shadow ban you, all these sorts of things. Make sure that you don't get the reach, you don't get the responses, nobody answers, the live chat disappears, all this shit, right? Why? Why do that?
If we can just produce energy at scale and never even have to go into that debate, then the powers that be that are trying to use this as a political bludgeon over the top of the people's heads, then it becomes a non-issue and we can move forward.
Right. And you said, why should we listen to politicians about science? You could have probably stopped before about science. But the problem is that there's a political reality, and then the political reality, which I don't disagree with the result. Having grown up and since 1983 been in the energy business and looked at the way energy is produced, look at the extraordinarily inefficient and polluting ways that we go about boiling water to create steam. I'm all for doing it better. If I don't have to dig up coal from underneath the earth and disturb the surface of the earth and create runoff and all this kind of thing, I'd rather not burn coal, frankly, if I can get away without doing it. Right now, 60% of the energy in the world is produced by coal to this day. And it's increasing. It's not decreasing. It's increasing. So, that is an issue. There was a time in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that when it snowed, the snow was gray because there was so much coal being produced into the air. It would just come down gray.
I agree with that. There are other particulates that are in the air that is a healthier way to produce that. And if we can create energy at scale and maybe a higher cost up front infrastructure.
You can even tell how excited Kinetics is getting because he's talking over him, and he rarely does that.
Wise, but long term the cost goes down because hot water's free once the infrastructure is already there versus having to continually mine products out of the ground
and transport them and burn them and do all those things. So
Wyoming I love Wyoming, and I know they don't like to hear that because oil and gas and fossil fuels such as coal and transporting them across state lines, that's how Wyoming makes a lot of its money. But I think Wyoming would be really quick to jump on board with reform energy too.
Well, yeah, Wyoming has a tremendous amount of geothermal energy underneath the surface of its land, and so how we do this is really important. In the old days, we would, like the California plants that were built in the 60s and are still running. They're built on formation of hot rocks. They drill a pipe down, and then they drill a pipe down over here. They inject water here, and it goes underneath, and it gets through the hot rocks. But it's not directed. It's just in the geological formation. And then the steam is created underneath the surface of the earth, and a portion of that steam finds its way up this tube here, and then goes to run the steam turbine. But the problem is you're constantly injecting new water because you're constantly losing water. This is an extraordinarily inefficient way to do it. And most of the geological formations that are the easiest to access to make this clean energy are in arid portions of the world. So that one problem is the consumption of water. The other problem with that is that once you put steam on hot rocks, you're like fracking underneath the surface of the earth. As a person who stands on and lives on the earth, I've never been too keen about the idea of breaking apart the earth underneath my feet. It just doesn't sound right to me. I know fracking has created a lot of natural gas. It's actually done a lot of good. It's created economic development, jobs. But I do believe that there's a better way to approach all of these things. And what we're working with is a technology where, as we drill down into the hot rocks, we then turn and we follow the seam of hot rocks. But we do so with a closed loop system, so that the water that is in that closed loop is circulating constantly from the top down to the hot to the heat, bringing the heat to the surface in a loop. It's pressurized so that it never boils. You don't actually, in what's hitting the hot rocks, it's always liquid. It's never turned into steam. It comes up above the surface of the earth and it hits a heat exchanger sitting on top. So you transfer that heat. It's about 300 degrees centigrade, which is pretty daggone hot.
That's pretty hot. You can boil some water with it.
Yeah. So then you put that through another closed loop system of water that gets here, turns into steam, goes through the turbine, runs the generator, goes into a condensation tank, gets pumped back over, and that process gets repeated. So we have a closed loop system on top of another closed loop system. We have a subterranean closed loop system and an above the earth closed loop system. But that way we are maximizing the use of the water. We're not just blowing it out.
So this is what I was talking about, how they've got a solution with, the large amounts of water waste with geothermal and kind of like the geothermal solutions that exist currently.
Like every other plant does. And that's really important because the big hit against geothermal is water usage. This takes care of that. Is it a little more expensive to build on the outside? It is. But are we paying for fuel once we get it built? We're not paying for fuel. It's self-sustaining.
As a business guy, the efficiency of doing business that way just makes more sense to me, even if there's a higher cost infrastructure up front. To me, it's economically more feasible long term, as well as that discount. People don't realize when you can create discounts, that gets passed along to the end consumer. And we want cheap and available energy for everybody.
Yes, that's the key. See, if you're always having to bring diesel fuel in or coal in or natural gas in through a pipeline constantly, you're paying for that fuel, which is put on top of the capex for whatever plant you've built, right? So you might spend $450 million to build a 450 megawatt power plant that runs on natural gas. Well, that's very expensive. And then you've got to amortize the cost of that capex over the life of the plant, of course. But then you've got the ongoing fuel supply, which adds to it. So when that all goes out to the consumer, that's every one of those is it's like a layer cake. It keeps getting bigger and bigger as you go up. And then by the time we get out to the people, they're paying 12, 14 cents kilowatt hour. This is not where we want to be, because we want available, abundant energy.
Okay, let's just take that model for a second that he just described, and let's break that out into another area where that's constantly being done up until 2016, when finally the legislation was loosened up to allow for companies to go and get outside money, outside help, and retail be able to get involved without being an accredited investor, is drum roll please, the stock market investor space, IPOs, all of this, right? It's the same fucking game where it's like it starts off as a company, and then they go out and they get their Series A, they get their Series B, they get all these different phases of investment where this new round of money pays off the old guys, but makes it more and more expensive. Like, we're literally manufacturing inflation right then and there, every single round of money that we're getting, right, and taking. And we're losing percent of ownership, we're losing sight of the mission, sight of the purpose of the entire project is getting diluted down by all this outside influence of how they think you should be doing it, how you should be dressing, behaving, all this shit, right? And then finally, by the time it gets to IPO, and this is what is mind-blowing about how dumb retail actually is they don't get that there are upwards of thousands of people who they're already in profit. These aren't people. These are funds. These are fund managers. These are fucking banks. These are like billionaires. These are guys who are a lot, they're not smarter than you, but they got a lot more money than you. And they're gonna get their return. JP Morgan always gets their return, right? So all those people are in line at the minute that thing goes live. They pump it up on purpose with retail FOMO included. They sell, immediately they sell, and they lock in their profits, and you get fucked. So that same process to where all these middlemen, give me my piece, along the way are making power, energy super fucking expensive, right? It's the same shit with the money system. Do you see how it's the same system, the same problems duplicated again and again and again and again, right? It doesn't make sense anymore. There's better models to structure all of this shit, right? And that's why, if there is a threat that still exists from cryptocurrencies, it is that they've gotten people to realize and understand that I can take my dollars and go direct to the asset and do whatever the fuck I want with this, right? And I can get involved at a ICO level. That's why it got so big in 2018, 2019, is because that was the first time ever that regular people could go and, yes, vote with my dollars. And it's the same shit they're actually doing with Mad Energy. Is you can go with $500, vote with your money, and get involved in that right now and start earning dividends. Same thing.
To drive people's lives, to allow them to live like they want. So this is the lack of fuel, I think, is really cool.
Yeah,
about geothermal.
Well,
I like that.
Me too. And the other side of it is, and I started the conversation at the beginning of this stream talking about these local energy co-ops who manage the infrastructure, and that's a huge added margin to the cost of your electricity. A lot of people don't realize that. There's not a lot of discussion about what it costs to run these substations and the transmission lines in these small co-ops that are fractionalized and buy their energy from these larger corporations, and then put a margin on top of it before distributing it to you.
And they have to. I mean, they're distributing it, they're maintaining the lines, they've built the lines, they're doing the same thing. There's costs involved, but there's a better way to do it. And this probably gets us to the second element of why geothermal has never been developed as a major energy source. Because it's like less than 1% of the slice of the pie right now.
Yeah.
Probably our best source. We're just not using it. So number one is the lack of water. Well, I've described how we've overcome that. The second one is that when God made hot rocks, he made them in the middle of nowhere. So there's no people.
Well, there's usually heavy minerals, heavy metals, and temperatures and things like sulfur that prevent you from being able to grow with that water. So I think that has a lot to do with the fact that most of our societies evolved from an agrarian society, and you can't water your crops with the hot water because it literally has too many of these other elements in it that are not conducive for plant and animal life. And I think that's part of the reason that these hot rocks are so far away from civilization.
It's true, and many of them are located in the West and in states that are public land states, and you can't develop those public lands anyway. So there's just no people where the hot rocks are, and the problem that creates is transmission. So by the time you go from the remote area where it's easiest to access the geothermal formations and you build transmission lines on top of the cost of building the plant, by the time you build all those transmission lines, then the whole thing economically doesn't work. So what we have done is we've been working with a group that I love this technology. It changes everything for the future. We have the ability to deliver electricity wirelessly on a commercial scale, globally safely.
That's amazing, George. Can you tell us a little more about how that works? So is it based upon the predecessor technologies that everyone talks about with the Wardenclyffe Tower and Tesla? Can you give us a little more information on that?
Yeah, absolutely. We all know that. Well, most people know, Tesla freaks anyway, like I am. They're familiar with what Tesla was doing. And he was actually springboarding off of the work of a guy named Jonathan Zinnik, who mathematically proved way back when that there is a electromagnetic field that is surrounding the surface of the Earth. So what he postulated is that if you could build a tower, in the Wardenclyffe, everybody remembers the big tower with the ball on top of it, and then the way it's always depicted is with all this lightning coming out of it and things like that. It doesn't really look that way when you do it, but that's great for artists. Yeah. But so his postulation and the work that Jonathan Zinnik did was that if you could launch a wave that went up and got caught at the top of the wave in this electromagnetic field that surrounds the Earth, it would bounce back down, hit the surface, go back up, bounce back down, and in doing so, it would go all the way around the surface of the Earth. Because the problem with transmitting electricity on a wave is that it doesn't bend with the surface of the Earth. It would be only line of sight. So
And
for
that's the
example,
Hertz, correct? That's
yeah, that would be use of Hertzian technology, because as opposed to Zinnic waves, Hertzian waves go in every single direction, 360 degrees. Every aspect of the compass, they go that way, they go up, they go down, and they're widely dispersed. They're not focused. So it takes a great deal of energy to produce a Hertzian wave. When we have coaxial cable coming into our house for TV, what we're doing is we're taking Hertzian waves and we're directing them and capturing them inside of that band of steel. You wonder, it's almost like a Faraday cage that is around a coaxial cable that comes into your house if you've ever used that stuff. And what that does is that directs the Hertzian waves in, and it focuses them, and it makes them much more efficient so that they can travel with less energy, travel farther. What Zinnic found out is that we can use this electromagnetic field to do the same thing on a global basis. So there's a group that has built a tower down in Texas, and you can see it on the internet. You can see pictures of it. I was there when it was being built. I climbed through the whole thing. I know the inventors. I know the people that were behind it. And Matt is working closely with them. And we're hoping to make an announcement in the next month about a partnership with those folks. And then Matt will be an integral part of rolling this technology out and bringing it to commercialization. And so we are super pumped about that, because if you just imagine, if we can transmit commercial electricity, power, safely, wirelessly, globally, then we can take power generated in Wyoming and we can deliver it to people in Africa who don't have the ability to run a well pump.
Yep.
They don't have clean water. They don't have refrigeration. They don't have sewer treatment. They're dealing with diseases, and they're dealing with things that develop. The fundamental requirement for a developed nation is energy.
Absolutely, 100%. That was the point I was trying to make earlier, that financial energy is not created without actual energy. So.
Right. And, electricity is it. I mean, electricity is the deal. I mean, it's not.
So there you go. That's all I wanted to go through is just a couple nuggets. And I know there's some duplication between the two clips, but I hope that if you're just trying to get a bird's eye view, that this has got you enticed, right? I'm going to link both these videos, great interviews below that you can go and listen to the rest of. Also, too, I had George on this show on the Crypto Junkie channel, and we talked quite a bit about that. Things I would have asked if I could go back is I would have asked him more about his time, like in the 80s, growing through the energy sector, and just how like that timeline of just how the narrative shift. You had it, people like Al Gore that was telling us what all the way back then that we had 10 years to live, and because of climate change and all this and blah blah blah. And so I would have probably asked more questions about that, and then maybe just some of the more constitutional stuff and that. But outside of that, I was pretty satisfied with the interview that we did, and clearly, like, the more he's getting out, like, the more he's kind of expanding on these concepts and whatnot too. So I absolutely love this. If you guys want to get involved, it's something as simple as you could just share it. You could just share this video. You could share any of the other videos. Get involved, comment on it, so that the algorithms do their thing and get more people attracted and showing these sorts of videos in front of. But yeah, if you've got questions or you just got something to say, comment below, hit the like button, and then if you like this sort of thing and you want more, subscribe, hit the bell notification, be on the lookout, more videos coming soon. See ya.